The beat-em-up genre, also known as brawlers. The one genre that defines great gaming during the early 90s, beating up every enemy that gets in your way with the character of your choice, and it's very satisfying. This genre will always have the common tropes such as an evil organization causing crimes and other misdeeds, a ragtag group of heroes being called into action, defeating waves of lower thugs before taking on the boss at the end of the stage. Lather, rinse, and repeat. While it is true that beat-em-ups are known for their very simplistic gameplay, developers knew that they could do so much than keeping it simple. Developers would also try to include weapons that characters can use the environment to their advantage, or have characters with distinctive signature moves. Many games would implement this, but the one series that does it so well would be the Streets of Rage series, also known as Bare Knuckle in Japan. It has garnered such a huge following that decades after the last game, a new game is already on the works, but we'll get to that at the end of the video. So, what say we dive into the Streets of Rage Retrospective. This is Kung Fu Master, created by Irem in 1984, right in the middle of a large-scale recession of the game industry known as the video game crash. Although during that recession, the industry was doing fine in Japan. It's a simple game of going from point A to B, beating up enemies and then the boss. But as simple as it is, this game is really hard. Still, Kung Fu Master was considered to be the very first in the series of beat-em-ups of that era, but the genre wouldn't be the talk of the gaming world until 1987 with the release of Double Dragon. Other than having common mechanics, this game is innovative in that it's the first brawler to have a two-player co-op gameplay, and the game is considered to be what jump-started the golden age of brawlers. Other brawlers would capitalize on Double Dragon's success, such as Capcom's release of Final Fight in 1989, which features 3 iconic characters with their own moves, nice controls, and soundtrack. While Konami also in 1989 would release Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which has 2 different variations, one with 2 players and one with all 4 turtles playable. The golden age of brawlers would continue on to the early 90s when both SNES and Sega Genesis would enter the market. The SNES would have a port of Final Fight in 1991, which is playable, but not as engaging as the arcade, especially when it lacks 2 players. The Genesis would have a port of Golden Axe in 1989 and stayed true to the original arcade's gameplay. While the SNES was gearing towards the younger crowd, Sega's motives for the Genesis was to make their games cater to the more mature crowd, giving the games so much edge and attitude as they first did with the release of Sonic the Hedgehog. The beat-em-up genre is still going strong in the arcades, and Sega needed a new IP for gamers to enjoy the Genesis than just gambling on Sonic and Shinobi's success alone. In the fall of 1991, one series in the genre would forever be etched into gamers' memories. Enter the very first Streets of Rage, known as Bare Knuckle in Japan. It is considered to be edgier than Final Fight in terms of just about anything, from the setting, the gameplay, music, and overall plot. The plot involves a criminal group simply named the Syndicate, led by its leader, Mr. X, taking over the city, which is likely New York, and the police are at the mercy of the faction as Mr. X declares crime legal in the city. However, 3 ex-cops would resign from the force and do whatever they can to take back the city themselves. You get to choose which character you want to take into battle, be it Adam Hunter, a kickboxer who is the power type, Blaze Fielding, a judo practitioner who is the speed type, or Axel Stone, karate expert who is the balance type, who I mostly choose for this game. Right away, you can feel the game's impact from the first hit you land and performing combos to make your enemies submit. If anything, beating up enemies in this game feels more like a stress reliever, not only unleashing combos, but you'll also find happiness in performing other mechanics that this game is known for, such as grabbing a thug, vaulting to the other side, and either slam or suplex them for your amusement. It's even more fun when you pick up weapons such as bottles, knives, pipes, or baseball bats and just deck them in the face. Enemies come in different varieties ranging from knife wielders, to whip wielders, martial artists, circus jugglers, and thugs that can throw you for a considerable amount of damage, but you can actually perform a move that can prevent throw damage should you get caught in one. As fun as these moves are to perform, don't get too overconfident in this game because it doesn't matter what difficulty setting you have, you're bound to get surrounded really quickly. These punks are very good at ambushing you, and if you can't get away from tight squeeze, there's that A button, which, if pressed, a squad car with some cops refusing to belly up to Mr. X will assist you by blasting an RPG that will damage any enemies on screen. You can only summon backup once per life or pick up a police car item to supply yourself with an extra help. You go through 8 stages, and with the exception of stage 7, each will have a boss in the end. I will say that with the exception of the first boss, the rest of the other game's bosses hit like tanks, especially the boss of stage 3, Abadidi, who is capable of pushing you back to stop your combo string. Then you have the stage 4 boss who can breathe fire at you and you cannot lift him for a throw. And then there's the Blaze clones in stage 5, who are good at dodging just about every attack I could throw at them until I've had enough and just summon backup, which I find kinda funny when it's already on an already sailing cruise. To make it worse, I have to fight 2 of stage 2's boss and I get isolated so easily. But then comes stage 7, which is just an endurance round, and it sucks that there's no food to save myself. Once I'm in stage 8, that's when I know I'm about to get a game over as all of my continues have been used, and it's an all-out boss rush, and I just discovered that I can exploit the game by attacking 2 times, short pause, and then repeat again. However, I can only do that on some bosses because once I reach the Blaze clones again, that's when I know I'm done for, and it doesn't help that I can't bring any backup here. So I had to use the stage select code, restart the stage, and this time play as Adam just to get the boss rush over with. By the time I reached Mr. X, this is where the game would branch to different endings depending on whether or not you're willing to join the Syndicate or not, which I chose not to, and the fight is on. Mr. X is fast and hits hard, but as long as you get rid of his thugs first and keep that pipe intact, since Adam is best suited for using it, you'll win the battle. The overall presentation looks very stunning even for today's standards. It's very ambitious for Sega to keep every single stage be at night instead of alternating between night and day like Final Fight would, and the colors used in the stages are actually quite ambient despite the nighttime setting. It's also great to see some effects in some stages, such as the neon lights in the first stage, seeing some trash blown away by the winds in stage 2, or good parallax scrolling in stage 5. Of course, Streets of Rage wouldn't be complete without talking about the music. In this case, techno music, which really defines the 90s, and it's something that I would jam to over dubstep any day, especially when the music in this game is done none other by the legendary Yuzo Koshiro. Oh, we'll be hearing more of him later. Usually the Genesis is not known for having good music in the system's games, with exceptions such as the Sonic, Shinobi, Thunder Force, or the Toe Jam and Earl series, just to name a few that do have good quality music. But Yuzo Koshiro came and he makes it work for this game. The game overall is kinda slow in a way, and while it can also be difficult, especially halfway through, it's still playable and it's a very solid game with its graphics drawn nicely, tight but manageable controls, and a stylish music to dance to. Though Sega knew they could do better than that after what they just created, so they took that working formula and just enhanced it, which we then get Streets of Rage 2. In this game, the city is back to normal and the police force has been properly re-established. However, a year has passed and Mr. X broke out of prison. To get his revenge, the Syndicate has kidnapped Adam, and it's up to Axel and Blaze to rescue Adam with the aid of two newcomers. Max Thunder, a wrestling superstar and training buddy of Axel, and Eddie Skate Hunter, though he's named Sammy Hunter in Japan, Adam's younger brother, and as his alias implies, he brawls with rollerblades on. Once you start the game, what immediately comes to mind would be how beautiful the graphics are, as it's more colorful than the first, and they keep becoming more lively as you go further in the game, whether it's the bridge at night or going through the carnival. Another graphical improvement will be the sprites. The first game's sprites are mostly small, but by contrast, the sprites are larger and more defined, especially on the enemies as the developers added more light and saturation to the colors that they're using. Also, the music is what I consider to be the best in the series without a doubt. Good old Yuzo Koshiro has done it again and made the songs in the game even more upbeat than the first game. Not to talk smack about today's dance music, but Koshiro's composition is, in my opinion, how actual rave music should sound. As for the overall gameplay, while you can no longer summon a police car, the fighting engine has vastly been improved. Aside from the already existing mechanics of the first game, each character has a rush attack that you can perform by pressing forward 2 times then attack, with the best one being Axel's Grand Upper. Your A button is now your desperation move. In the first game, you can only use the button once per life to summon backup to save your hide, but in 2, you have a special attack that frees you from isolation but at the cost of some HP. You also have a stronger special which is done by pressing a direction plus A, but use it wisely as it also drains some HP. Speaking of characters, Axel and Blaze are the balance types, with Blaze still moving quicker than Axel. Max is the power type, and while very sluggish, he can dish out damage to enemies, has the best range when using blunt weapons such as pipes or bats, and while he can't vault over like the others, he can perform a damaging air throw. Skate, by contrast, is the fastest and is the only one who can dash. A very common trope with speed characters is that he has low defense and low damage output, but he has a special overhead throw which you can press the attack button the very second he finishes vaulting. That, and it's cool to see him do a breakdance as his crowd clearing move. The second game also hosts new enemy types such as ninjas that wield swords and daggers, obese enemies that breathe fire, kickboxers that can sometimes block attacks, even some weapons, pipe-wielding bikers that throw grenades at your face, and robots, just to make up for the lack of enemy variety in the last game. Some bosses return, such as Abedidi, who has an even higher damage output and you can't cheese a combo so easily this time, and some bosses are new, such as a bartender who can throw you and block attacks, a thug on a jetpack and you have to jump attack him, a boxer named Bear who you cannot do a back throw and also has high damage output like Abedidi, or Mr. X's right-hand man, Shiva, who will drain your HP and lives when you least expect it, and he's really fast that grabbing him for a throw is really hard to do. If you look past some of the aforementioned bosses that give you a hard time, progressing through the game is not that difficult, as long as you use combos canceling to a rush attack and throws to your advantage, especially Max. There is no doubt that Streets of Rage 2 is a masterpiece, if not one of the greatest brawlers in the Golden Age and of all time. Everything from the improved gameplay, the wonderfully drawn graphics, and the musical prowess of Yuzo Koshiro, this game is a must-play for years to come. It's a brawler that should never be missed to play, no matter the generation. In 1994, Streets of Rage 3 is released, and in my opinion is actually the oddball of the series, and I'll explain as we go on. The plot involves Mr. X being at it again, only now he has a scheme in which he's kidnapped the new chief of police and using robots impersonating him and other politicians to bring mass hysteria to the city. Never heard of that plan before. Adam remains on the force, acting as the chief of police to calm the police force down, while Max returns to wrestling, so it's up to the returning Axel, Blaze, Skate, and newcomer Dr. Gilbert Zahn, a half-human cyborg whose research was misused by Mr. X that he converted himself as such to aid the heroes. There are some improvements to the battle system. In this case, Streets of Rage 3 is the one game in the series where you can make use of the 6-button controller. The X, Y, and Z buttons can be mapped to have an easier back attack, stronger special, and an easier rush attack. Speaking of specials, you now have a gauge that gradually fills up, and if you use the A button, it won't drain your HP. the only time your specials can drain your HP is when you don't let the gauge fill up first. Risk versus reward, in a sense. Another new mechanic is that the more thugs you beat up, you level up your character's rush attack, and when it reaches 3 stars, which I never did in this game, you'll have a different rush attack which either deals more damage or help you get away from being surrounded. However, if you lose a life, you go down a level, and if you use a continue, all levels will reset back to 0. All the weapons in the game have durability limits, as after a few connected hits, the weapon breaks. Also, characters have special attacks depending on the wielded weapon, like Blaze being proficient with bladed weapons, or Skate being proficient with either a knife or a 2x4 plank. There are some things in the game I do find questionable. In this case, I don't understand why some colors have been altered for the US version, and why in the US version must the difficulty accelerate too quickly, especially when in later stages, I get dogpiled way too fast and their damage output is too high even for normal grunts. Usually in any beat 'em up, the number of enemies increase when there's more than one player, but here, they increase anyway even just on one player. The bosses also come off as unfair. Shiva still remains fast, but not as hard as the past, but in later stages, such as the twins, will drive you insane just like in the first game. They'll dodge almost any attack just like they did in the past. And then there's the jetpack crew, where the leader has 4 bars of HP, and the henchmen spawn endlessly until you defeat the leader. It's also in this game in which 4 different endings can occur, depending on the difficulty you play, whether or not the chief of police survives, and whether or not you defeat the final boss before the timer runs out. Seriously, having this difficulty spike increasing on me is more than I can bear, so it's better if you're playing the Japanese version of the game, which from what I researched is a lot easier. On the plus side, the game does have some good secrets, such as being able to play as Shiva, who is more of a powerhouse than Zan, although he can't wield any weapons. You can also play the kangaroo, either by using a cheat code or defeating the clown in stage 2 without defeating the kangaroo, and you have him. There is also a character named Ash who serves as a comic relief villain, but is only available in the Japanese version. While the graphics and gameplay engine are good, Streets of Rage 3 seems to be taking some steps backwards in terms of difficulty. I know they gradually get harder the further you advance, but the US version doesn't go easy on you, and you're bound to lose more lives in continues rather than earning more of them. Also, when it comes to getting the ending, I much rather have it linear like the second game. It's only enjoyable if you have a second player with you, or if you play the Japanese version. But if you like this kind of challenge, more power to you. By the time 1995 rolled in, we wouldn't get a new Streets of Rage game, and the golden age of brawlers was very much over, but the genre itself is still alive, only less innovative than it was before. We are now entering the advent of 3D gaming, and developers would attempt to revitalize the genre and bring it to the new dimension. One of which is a game called Fighting Force on the PlayStation 1. Some say this game is a spiritual successor to Streets of Rage, and it can be to some extent, what with the trope of a group of vigilantes stopping an evil organization group. I have played this game for a while with my cousins and enjoyed it, but after replaying the Streets of Rage games, I realized that Fighting Force was not that good, having sluggish gameplay and uninspired characters. As the years go, there have been several attempts to bring forth a new Streets of Rage, especially a concept video for the Dreamcast, which is said to have new mechanics and a first-person mode, but it didn't come to pass. The days of 2D brawls were very much done and over with, and 3D brawlers are mostly missed than hits. That is until 2001, when Dynasty Warriors 2 came to town. The first Dynasty Warriors started off as a fighting game, but Dynasty Warriors 2 and later games in the series would instead be a 3D beat-em-up, or hack and slash if you will. In my opinion, this game was a proper way to revitalize the genre, what with its fast gameplay, nice detail on the graphics, and a rockin' soundtrack. I enjoyed it so much that I would find myself liking the other games in the series, except for 6 and 9 because they suck. However, in 2003, an indie studio called Bomber Games created a fan-made project called Streets of Rage Remake. They made the entire game from the ground up without any use of reverse engineering, let alone using any existing code from any of the games. It is strictly just creating their own code alone. When the game is available for download in 2011, Sega caught wind of this and forced a cease and desist. But as time passes and saw how people actually have so much enjoyment of the game, not only did Sega drop the C&D order, but they also praised the developers and let them keep doing their project. Heck, it's because of this new attitude from Sega that they're letting other indie developers use the source code of Genesis games and experiment with them to produce some games and give players a whole new experience, such as the creation of Sonic Mania. This fan remake has all 6 heroes playable from the start. It has over 93 stages, with all stages from the 3 games and some originals from the remake, new weapons, new enemies, original combat ideas such as fighting on motorcycle or speedboat, and a shop which you can use the points you gathered after beating the game and spend them to get some unlockables such as infinite lives, the extra characters from Streets of Rage 3, play 2 new original characters, or even play as Mr. X himself. Yup, Chicago typewriter and all. The gameplay engine plays on Streets of Rage 3 rules, only faster and more responsive than in the Genesis games. In addition to the third game's controls, you can now summon backup and it's just as effective as the first game. Another mechanic implemented is the weapon specials. All characters and the hidden characters except for Mr. X all have special attacks depending on the wielded weapon. For example, Shiva, who initially cannot use weapons in Streets of Rage 3, is proficient with bladed weapons. Mr. X, however, since he already has a Chicago typewriter, immediately throws away a weapon you pick up. The graphics of every single stage is beautifully designed and the dev team did a great job at making the character sprites be as HD as they can. All of the remix music are composed and remixed so beautifully, but still keeping that 90s dance and electronic feel, paying homage to the 3 games' compositions. An idea that I'm sure Yuzo Koshiro would be proud of. As I've enjoyed playing the series, this fan-made game is the definitive way of playing the whole trilogy. You can spend so much time playing the game to unlock many things and also go out of this world with many pathways and scenarios to choose from. You can find this remake and download it from the SORR community forums. Believe me, you won't regret it. Now, I enjoyed the entire trilogy as a whole, but out of all the 3 games, it is Streets of Rage 2 that excelled much better. Even though Streets of Rage 3 introduced some new gameplay elements, it is Streets of Rage 2 that did better on fun factor, replay value, controls, and of course, that's sweet music. But if by any chance you like one game over the other from the entire trilogy, well, more power to you. And if you don't feel like getting the cartridges, and I can understand why, you can always get them, all 3 of them actually, via the Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection on the PS3 or 360, or via the Sega Genesis Classics via the PS4, Xbox One, the SW, or Steam. So what does the future hold now for the Streets of Rage series? Well, fans rejoice. It has been announced that Streets of Rage 4 will be in development right now and will be released sometime next year. The upcoming Streets of Rage 4 will be set on 2D like all the other games are, and it'll still play on Streets of Rage 3 rules, only now with a new mechanic of juggling your opponents onto walls like you would in a 3D fighting game like Tekken. And so far, only Axel and Blaze are confirmed as the playable characters, but there's no telling what other characters are coming, or whether or not Yuzo Koshiro will return as the series composer. Only time will tell, but I am looking forward to the series' comeback. Plus, I am digging the whole comic book style art. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you like this retrospective, and if you do, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also ring the bell for any new videos that might be coming from me. Also, don't forget to like and follow me on Facebook. Now, I will take this time now to tell you all that I'll be taking a little bit of a break from reviewing games, if only because, well, first off, I still have my convention/vacation documentary show called Conumentary, and I am definitely falling behind on making videos for them, since I only had 2 videos for that show. That and the fact that I'll also be busy recording so many games just to get myself ready for any upcoming reviews that I'll be uploading soon. Until then, this has been Musashi X, and I bid you all farewell, take care, and stay tuned.